Madam Web is a movie made for no one.
It's not for the hip, young, cool kids, and it's not for the old-fashioned cinephiles.
It's not for the anti-woke MRA, and not for the girl power feminists.
It's not for people who like superhero movies, and it's not for people who hate superhero movies. This is a movie that nobody cares about.
And from what I can tell, not even the people involved in the movie care.
So we took it upon ourselves to watch the movie so that you don't have to, in a poorly edited but rather detailed review of the entire movie, so that you can fully understand what a lukewarm, nonsensical, contrived, and utterly meaningless mess this movie really is.
And if you do like this movie, there's nothing against you, but you should feel bad. JK, I'm Detective Mio.
And I'm Inspector Keto, and this is Madam Web.
In the beginning of this movie, in the Amazon, we are introduced to Constance Webb, the mother of the main protagonist, and Ezekiel Sims, the future antagonist.
The opening scene has some of the worst writing and line delivery I've seen since Jurassic World Dominion. It's actually impressive how bad it is.
I felt like I was having a stroke.
They drop some casual exposition and they talk about the spider people who are said to live around there, and that they punish evil men. But the said spider people never do that in this movie despite being given the opportunity to do so.
I just don't give a
Moving on with the story, they are looking for a super spider with super venom that can magically cure anything. And Constance is lucky enough to just find the thing. Then Ezekiel proceeds to shoot and kill everyone, except for Constance, who's still sort of alive. Ezekiel runs away with the spider.
I think there was originally supposed to be some backstory for Ezekiel. When he tries to take the spider from Constance, she says that the spider can help people, and he mentions how nobody helped his family when they were starving, but that never pops up again. I'm also not sure why he immediately resorted to murder.
Immediately afterwards, those mythical spider people who she didn't believe in just arrive and pick her up and jump away into the trees, and some of the worst CGI imaginable. This scene took place during the 1970s, maybe that affected the special effects.
Anyway, the spider people let a spider bite Constance, and Cassie is born. Santiago, this guy over here, promises to be there when Cassie comes back.
Constance dies.
This prologue left me with many questions, and by the end of the movie, I had no answers.
That is the prologue. Now on to the big main chunk of the movie. However, we can't talk about everything, so not everything's going to make total sense, but the movie doesn't make sense anyway. 30 some odd years later, we meet with adult Cassie and her friend Ben, who are paramedics and they drive the ambulance, and they're attempting to save a woman and bring her to the hospital in Queens.
Like most of the movie, the dialogue and character interactions are mind-numbingly bad, but stays that way for the entire film, so we're trying not to mention it every single time that it happens.
Our main character, Cassie, is supposed to be, I guess, the antisocial type, but she just comes off as a huge jerk. Like her and her friend Ben seem totally fine with throwing away a drawing that was given to them by a child who was just saying thank you for saving his mother.
Pretty cold.
It is also worth noting that a woman was flatlining in the back of their ambulance while they continued to have a rather light-hearted, jovial conversation. And then there's this one joke that we're gonna nitpick real quick.
While eating Chinese takeout, there's this on-the-nose fortune cookie scene where Cassie doesn't have a fully written out fortune. Ben says, "You know what that means? It means that the printers aren't working, we can't eat here anymore." It doesn't make any sense because why would anyone stop eating at a restaurant because the printers stopped working? The joke doesn't make any sense, thus it's not really funny at all.
Calm down, Keto. We still have a ways to go.
Anyway, Cassie returns home to a cat and says, "Oh, we strays have to stick together," which I'm sure I've heard a million times, but I just cannot figure out where I've heard it.
But she decides to keep the picture and stores it in a case that belonged to her mother with a bunch of spider notebooks and stuff. I guess this shows character development or her longing for a family.
Flashing forward a little bit, while trying to save a man in a car on a bridge, Cassie gets trapped in said car and falls into the water.
She dies while she's down there and has a weird, trippy CGI vision. It looks really bad. You know the effects in Morbius and that weird stringy stuff that they were doing? Looks about the same quality.
It just really doesn't work. Like, it's so underwhelming, yet it's all CGI. Like, oh, look at this, it's such a spectacle, but it's not that interesting. It's not even like Doctor Strange.
It's something we've seen a million times before.
Ben revives her and all of a sudden she starts having these weird visions of the future.
But what is our antagonist doing? Well, Ezekiel is rich for some reason that's never stated. He's immortal or ageless or something now because of the spider, I guess, that bit him or whatever. But I just noticed that immortal people in a lot of movies tend to just be rich or monks or something. But he has special powers, which also includes Spider Riz, which uses on this one woman and then they sleep together.
While dreaming, he has a vision of the future where 3 spider women kill him. He's apparently been having this vision every day for quite a while now. The woman who he's sleeping with is some kind of government agent or whatever, and Ezekiel poisons her and gets the password to a super security camera thing that he will use to find the women in his dreams so he can kill them. This movie has taken a rather unexpected unexpected and stupid turn, and I know it's a lot, but bear with us.
Good old Cassie has those visions again and has an awkward barbecue. Her friend Ben has a sister-in-law who's going to have a baby shower, and in the middle of the party, they get called away to help with the fire, which everyone is extremely casual about.
During the scene, Cassie's powers keep giving her visions and stuff, and the scene just lasts way too long. This is a problem in a couple other scenes later in the movie, where the audience knows what's going on, but the movie just feels like it's lagging behind, and it becomes pretty tedious.
She sees a vision of her friend dying, and she tries to stop him from driving away and attempts to warn him, but he tells her not to worry about it. And almost immediately afterward, her friend dies because he's T-boned by a semi-truck. His death was avoidable for multiple reasons, such as just looking left and right, maybe? Also, does that mean that because she stopped him to talk to him, she caused him to die? Never mind, sorry, keep going.
Ezekiel has, I guess, the weird computer thing. I really do not understand this, but the computer perfectly reconstructs the three women's faces based off of his memory, and he de-ages the women's faces by about 10 years, which makes the women teenagers in the present.
There is another character introduced, and she's a whiz with computers. Maybe. I don't know. The movie never really tells us who she is, but she has some misgivings about killing teenagers. I guess she'd be fine if they were adults. Either way, Ezekiel pays her a fortune, so her misgivings never pop up again. He also threatens her life later in the movie, so maybe she's been kidnapped. Who knows?
Cassie is the big sad about her friend's death and goes home and watches A Christmas Carol. During one point in the movie, Mr. Scrooge is like, how can I change the future? And she's like, sorry, Mr. Scrooge, but you can't change the future. I kid you not, that's actually in the film.
I don't know why they chose A Christmas Carol. I guess it was the only movie they could think of that involved somebody talking about changing the future. But either way, she saves a pigeon from smacking into some glass that she saw in a premonition and learns that she can then save people using her visions. She can change the future. Then she leaves to go somewhere.
While taking the subway, Cassie has even more future visions, this time involving some teenagers who we know to be the Spider-Woman in Ezekiel's dream. Cassie has already met them before, so Destiny is doing some weird, crazy stuff, man.
Ezekiel tracks down the girls and is planning on killing them in broad daylight without a costume, not even so much as a ski mask.
Luckily, Cassie gets him off the train, but Ezekiel chases after them while wearing a Spider-Man type costume, which makes me wonder why he was going to kill them on the train without a costume earlier.
They try to get some help from some cops, but Ezekiel grabs the cops, doesn't even try to grab one of the girls, and the ladies get away.
This movie would be over really quickly, by the way, if Ezekiel had a gun, hired some assassins, or at least tried to kill the girls.
Cassie commits grand theft auto and steals a taxi cab to escape. She also gets to learn about the 3 teen girls a bit more.
Julie is the shy girl played by Sydney Sweeney, the only one that people are talking about. She acts like someone acting like a teenager, so it's not very convincing. Anya is the mature-ish one. She's also smart. Unfortunately, her father was an illegal immigrant, so if she can't go to the police later, else she'll be deported or something. Mattie is the rebel who has rich parents, but she's also woke or something about the environment. I don't really know. Also, side note, the police think that Cassie has kidnapped these girls, so she's kind of wanted. I say kind of because it never pops up again.
Cassie drops off the teens in the forest and then goes home, driving the same cab that she stole earlier. Don't worry, she takes off the license plate. She's not a complete idiot. And she finally reads her mother's notes for the first time in her life.
The reason she feels the need to look at the notes now is because one of the girls said that the man was crawling on the ceiling like a spider. That's not contrived at all. I'm not sure why she never looked at her mother's notes before, and I don't know how long she's had them or how she even got them. Also, Cassie doesn't know why or how Ezekiel's going after these girls, so dumping the teens off in the forest doesn't really make that much sense.
So either way, she now knows that Ezekiel knows her mom, or knew her mom. It doesn't change anything in the story.
The teens leave to a diner that they saw because Mattie will get hangry if she doesn't get food, and yes, that's the actual justification as to why they leave, despite being told to stay put. Earlier they had started a fire, and before they leave, they don't put it out, so Smokey the Bear is pretty bonked off right about now.
They eat the food and harass some boys and dance on the table to Britney Spears' Toxic, which I'm pretty sure came out in 2004, not 2003.
The thought process behind that song and just the way the sequence came together using it.
Well, credit where it's due, that was in the script when I got it, so it was
Cassie has a vision of them dying because Ezekiel found them, which is unironically the best scene in the movie. That's not to say that the scene is very good, though.
Cassie then saves them by hitting Ezekiel with a taxi cab. She gets touched by Ezekiel, though, and Ezekiel's poison gets into her hand, but luckily it's not too much.
As they drive away, escaping again, Cassie scolds them for their behavior, in a scene that lasts just a smidge too long.
The woman who tells Ezekiel where the girls are going via the computers tries to tell Ezekiel about Cassie, but Ezekiel doesn't care who Cassie is until he hears that her last name is Webb. It's weird that despite seeing her twice with the girls, he didn't really care who she was. I guess he just thought, that's a coincidence.
Cassie wants to abandon the girls, but the girls tell their sob stories. Some of them not for the first time, they sort of mentioned them earlier in the movie. Then Cassie decides to stay, and then she teaches the girls CPR, or like how to revive somebody if their heart stops.
It's very, very obvious that this is going to pop up later in the movie. But shortly afterwards, Cassie leaves for Peru and leaves the kids with Ben. They still don't know how Ezekiel keeps finding the girls, so she's really putting everyone's life at risk. Also, this movie takes place not that long after 9/11, and because she's a wanted woman, I'm surprised that security did not stop her at all.
Following her mother's notebooks, she finds Santiago and falls into a thing of water, has another weird vision, and discovers that her mother did love her. She wasn't just putting her life in danger by going to the Amazon. She was looking for the spider because Cassie would be born with a severe medical condition and wouldn't live that long. And the spider is supposed to be the cure. Afterwards, Santiago just drops on her that she's the only one who can change the future, and apparently she has the ability to be in multiple places at the same time.
During the entire movie, I never got the idea that Cassie really hated her mother, and I'm surprised she didn't try to figure out what her mother was doing in the Amazon before this point. Back in America, Ben and his sister-in-law have to go to the hospital because her sister-in-law's water has broken, and they take the kids with them, thus appearing on Ezekiel's radar once more. And I'm not even sure why they took the teens with them, honestly.
For that whole week, Ezekiel had no idea where they were, but I guess they just had to ruin their good thing they had going, because the plot needed it to happen. Ezekiel manages to trap the teens, and plans on using a grenade to blow them all up.
Luckily, Cassie's back in America and she saves the kids, and they go on a merry little chase using her stunt driving skills, in which they use a defibrillator to blast Ezekiel off the roof.
I don't think that's how that would work.
But you don't know for sure. The vehicle that they're driving breaks down, but Cassie has a vision that will get them all to safety via an airlift.
They blow up an old fireworks factory and make it to the roof, but the two helicopter pilots who they called in to save them end up blowing up and being killed. That was not in Cassie's vision. These fireworks are insanely powerful for some reason. Anyway, stuff happens and she uses her powers to split off into 3 different places, saves the girls, and they beat Ezekiel.
If that sounded very rushed, well, so is the finale. There's some poorly done slow-mo in this scene, and I'm still not sure why the pilots had to die. Since she had already seen the future, what caused the future to change?
I thought she was the only one who could change the future. So does that mean that she did something to change it?
And her ability to be in multiple places at the same time looks very stupid, and this cannot be overstated. I'm also very sorry, because if you haven't seen this movie, this probably sounds really, really weird, but believe me, all this is happening just as we described.
After beating Ezekiel, Cassie falls off some kind of catwalk and somehow gets injured in the fall, and then she lands in the water, and then she's shot in the face by a firework, and one of the most unlucky moments in cinema.
Afterwards, she's in a wheelchair, and I'm still not exactly sure what she did to herself to injure herself. I kind of missed that.
In the OG comics, she had a severe medical condition, which had her constantly on life support, but in this movie, the medical condition is cured by the spider, but at the end of the movie, they still want her to be Madam Web, so they break her back and make her blind.
Hilarious. Anyway, she's blind now, and all the girls hang out at her place, and she has this cringy vision of the future that looks really, really, really bad.
Once again, it cannot be overstated how awful it looks.
But that's the end of the movie. There's no post-credit scene.
Thank goodness.
Overall, after finishing the movie, I struggled to find a reason as to why anyone would want to watch this.
It's not an MCU project, so the MCU fanboys aren't interested. It lacks action that people come to expect from a superhero movie. It's not even an artsy type of movie. It's pretty conventional.
If you're going there hoping to see the goofy-looking Spider-Woman from the trailer, well, they're barely in this movie. Maybe about 2 minutes of screen time. So it's not just bad, it's pretty disappointing.
The story's extremely disjointed, and there's lots of stuff that pops up that either completely doesn't matter, or important things that pop up that are completely forgotten or not explained.
For instance, Ezekiel's suit. Who made it? Where'd it come from? Why does he have it? The NSA agent who he killed earlier. No one talks about her ever again.
It doesn't matter. It's in the past.
And other weird things like the airport and the taxi cab, and how a supposedly wanted person could just move around in New York City without any hindrance by the police.
The movie is made even harder to watch by the bad acting and even worse direction, although to be fair, I don't completely blame the director because I think Sony had a lot to do with this as well. Based off of interviews, it didn't seem like she really knew what was going on, and she was just kind of handed a script and told to go make a movie, and also Sony made her work with the writers who wrote Morbius. So this project was kind of doomed to fail.
As far as the characters go, they're pretty two-dimensional. They're either forgettable, unlikable, or uninteresting. There's almost no interest or intrigue surrounding Ezekiel's character because we already learned his backstory in the prologue, and they don't introduce any new story elements to make him interesting or cool or unique or anything as an antagonist. He's pretty forgettable.
There's a bit of character development for our main protagonist Cassie, I guess, where she wants to have a family, and in the end, she kind of gets one with the girls, but the whole storyline is pretty half-baked, and you kind of forget that it exists by the time you finish the movie.
And we forgot to mention this earlier regarding the family theme, that the Ben is Uncle Ben, and Peter Parker is born in the events of this film. It doesn't really matter, we just figured we'd tell you that.
Now, as much as I hate the Marvels, I will say that that movie had at least one kind of interesting fight scene that was at least interesting enough to look at. This movie is just kind of a boring sludge of stuff happening, punctuated by unintentionally funny moments of stupidity.
Both the Marvels and Madame Web have similar issues in regards to bad writing and incoherent storytelling. But another movie Madame Web could be compared to is Morbius, which begs the question, which is worse, Madame Web or Morbius?
Today in Miyakura Court, Madame Web is being put on trial for possibly being a superhero movie that is worse than Morbius. Alright, Judge Mio, the verdict is in.
And what is the result?
The jury has decided that it is in fact worse.
Ah.
And not worse.
Ah?
This has been Miyakura Court, where all judgments are final. Please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching. We don't do movie reviews very often, and the last one didn't do very well, but if you enjoyed this one, consider giving a like, and maybe we'll do some other ones in the future.
And if you couldn't care less about our movie reviews, feel free to check out our other types of videos, such as our investigations. If you like either one of those things, subscribe for more content.
But until we see you in the next video, he's Detective Mio.
And he's Inspector Keto.
And we hope that you have a blessed day.
Bye!